The air in the break room hung thick with unspoken tension, a stark contrast to the sterile, corporate environment of Hengshi Group. Seraphina, Balthazar began, his voice a low rumble that resonated in the small space. I told my father I wanted to gain more experience at Uncle Valerius's company before joining the family business. It's about broadening my horizons, gaining a different perspective. Anastasia wanted to scoff at the flimsy excuse, but Balthazar cut her off. Of course, that's just a pretext. My real reason is to be close to you. Anastasia's eyes widened, and she found herself taking an involuntary step back. Balthazar, ever perceptive, had already leaned in slightly. Standing at an imposing 6'1", he always had to bend down slightly to speak to her, to meet her gaze. It was a familiar posture, one that brought back a flood of memories, both sweet and bitter. It was the same posture he adopted when he kissed her. Seraphina, he repeated, a hint of vulnerability in his tone, are you still angry about what happened? She knew exactly what he was referring to. Back in their secondary school days, Anastasia had a close friend, Cordelia. Balthazar had always been wary of Cordelia, warning Anastasia that she was manipulative and untrustworthy. Anastasia, blinded by loyalty, had refused to listen, leading to numerous arguments with Balthazar. In the end, Balthazar had been proven right. Cordelia had lured Anastasia into a dangerous situation, intending to blackmail Valerius with compromising photos. Balthazar had intervened just in time, saving Anastasia from a potentially devastating outcome. Despite his relief, Balthazar had been furious. It was the first time Anastasia had ever seen him truly lose his temper. At that moment, terrified and ashamed, all she had wanted was comfort and reassurance, not his anger. In a fit of pique, she had broken up with him. Balthazar's subsequent study abroad program had turned their impulsive breakup into a real one. Later, Anastasia was admitted to the same university as Balthazar. She thought that time had healed and she might forget everything, which made her impulsive to accept the confession of love from Lucian. Lost in her memories, Anastasia remained silent. Balthazar sighed softly. Never mind, he said, reaching out to gently touch her hair. Today is your first day of the internship. Let's not dwell on the past. Focus on your work. The internship at Hengshi Group was notoriously demanding. Filled with top students from the most prestigious universities, everyone was fiercely competitive, vying for the coveted full-time positions. A month into the internship, the interns were scheduled to present their first project proposals. Anastasia was slated to present second, right after Ophelia. As Ophelia opened her presentation slides, Anastasia felt a jolt of disbelief. It was her project. Her carefully crafted proposal, stolen and presented as Ophelia's own. This is the previous section. The story goes. The green tea roommate wants to be my stepmother. My roommate likes to steal my things. From bags to boyfriends, and even dad. I'm with your dad now, call me mom. She was full of smugness, but the awkward thing was, the man she thought was my dad was actually our family driver. My dad is deeply obsessed with looks. To what extent? From his company's employees to my family's nannies and drivers, they all look good. On the first day of university, my family driver, Uncle Song, drove me to school and happened to be seen by my roommates. As soon as Uncle Song left, my roommates surrounded me. Suchi, was that your dad just now? He looks so young and handsome. I was about to say that he wasn't my dad, that my dad was actually even more handsome, when one of the girls asked. And I saw it just now, your family drives a BMW 7 Series, right? I suddenly became nervous. In high school, because my family was rich, I was used by a good friend. So I made up my mind to keep a low profile when I went to college. That's why I deliberately chose the cheapest car in the family to drive to school this morning. Was it still not low-key enough? Yes, it is. I vaguely affirmed, and the girl happily grabbed my hand. Suchi, my name is Su Feifei, let's be good friends. I actually liked Su Feifei at first. She wasn't a great beauty, but she was fair and thin, and she spoke softly, which could easily arouse people's desire to protect her. But later I slowly realized something was wrong. She likes to steal my things. When we went to the supermarket together, she wanted to grab everything I was interested in. Even a pack of instant noodles, even though there were several bags, she still wanted to grab the one in my hand. When we went to the cafeteria to eat, she also wanted to grab what I ordered. I thought I was overthinking it at first, until the day I saw her kissing my newly dating boyfriend on the playground. My boyfriend apologized to me with red eyes. "I'm sorry, Chi-Chi, I fell in love with Feifei. You are so strong and independent, you will be fine without me, but Feifei is different, she can't live without me. I just found it funny. I found that men really think highly of themselves. Are you oxygen or RMB? How can she not live without you?" But I was too lazy to entangle with him, I just poured the vegetable juice in my hand on his head. "You cheated on me, I cheated on you, we're even." That night, Su Feifei cried and apologized to me. "Chi-Chi, I really didn't mean it. It was Lu Hao who liked me so much that I couldn't bear to refuse him. Don't worry, I will break up with Lu Hao, and I will definitely return him to you." But I had already seen her true colors. "No need." I smiled faintly, "Don't you know? Lu Hao's father has late-stage cancer, his family owes a lot of money, and he has 5 younger siblings to support. I actually wanted to break up with a boyfriend with such conditions a long time ago, but I didn't know how to say it. I have to thank you for helping me get out of this misery." Seeing Su Feifei's face instantly turn green, I felt great in an instant. But I knew that Su Feifei would not let it go. Sure enough, the next week Su Feifei told us that she had broken up with Lu Hao and had a new boyfriend. "My new boyfriend is handsome and mature," she said sweetly, "speaking of which, Chi-Chi, I have to thank you for introducing us." Then she looked up at me. "My new boyfriend is actually your father." Then she took out her mobile phone and showed us the photo. I took a closer look. Oh my! Isn't this my family driver, Uncle Song, lying on the hotel bed with Su Feifei? I could figure out what was going on with my toes. Su Feifei thought Uncle Song was my father and deliberately seduced him, and Uncle Song didn't want to miss the young flesh that was offered to him, so he went along with it. Su Feifei was still looking at me with tears in her eyes. "Chi-Chi, your father actually didn't let me tell you, but I think I'm so sensible, I will definitely understand us, right?" Su Feifei said pitifully, but the smugness in her eyes could not be hidden. I really wanted to tell her that Uncle Song didn't let you tell me, maybe he was just afraid of revealing his true identity. But I didn't say it. I just pretended to be angry and shouted, "He doesn't deserve to be my father." Well, there is nothing wrong with what I said. Uncle Song is indeed not my dad. But how Su Feifei understands my words is her business. In the next few days, Su Feifei would occasionally ask my dad to pick her up from school in that BMW 7 Series. Her smug tail was about to curl up, and she smiled and said to me, "Chi-Chi, maybe we will be a family soon." I knew she wanted to disgust me, but I really wanted to laugh. But seeing her so smug, I decided to cooperate. Some people, they just take themselves seriously after being picked up a few times. I deliberately said sourly. "But don't think about it, how much does it cost to pick you up? If you have the ability, let a man buy you a bag." Well, not bad. This sarcastic tone is just right. I really saw Su Feifei's face turn green. A few days later, Su Feifei returned to the dormitory with a Chanel 2.55. "Chi-Chi, your dad is really something." She was beaming, but she still tried to pretend to be angry. I told him not to give me such an expensive bag, but he insisted on giving it to me. "Speaking of which, what kind of bag does he usually buy for you?" She looked at the MK next to me that I specially used to keep a low profile, and covered her mouth and laughed. "Oh, it turns out to be MK. Haha, it really suits you." I glanced at her bag. Well, a fake Chanel, and the kind of fake Chanel with poor quality. But I don't intend to tell Su Feifei directly. It's so boring to say it directly, so I slapped the table angrily. I don't even have Chanel. No, Feifei, I want your bag too. Let's go to the specialty store now. Even if I max out the card my dad gave me, I will buy this bag. With that, I took Su Feifei to the Chanel specialty store in the city center. As soon as I entered the door, I pointed to the bag on Su Feifei's shoulder and said to the salesperson, I want this bag. Exactly the same style. Su Feifei was already laughing so hard that she couldn't close her mouth. It's hard for her to try to be understanding and tell me. Chi-Chi, I know you haven't bought Chanel before and don't understand. This bag of mine is called 2.55, it's very expensive, it costs 50,000. The credit card limit your dad gave you is not enough, right? Besides, this is a popular style, it's often out of stock. Your dad specially asked someone to buy it for me abroad, I'm afraid there isn't one here. With that, she looked up at the salesperson and said proudly, Saleswoman, do you have this bag of mine in stock? The salesperson glanced at her bag and said lightly. Indeed, it's out of stock. Su Feifei was even more smug, but she heard the salesperson continue. Because your bag is fake, our specialty store doesn't sell fake goods. The smug smile on Su Feifei's face instantly froze. What nonsense are you talking about? Then she was furious, how could my bag be fake? Don't talk nonsense. The salesperson was very calm. I have been working here for 5 years, and I can't be wrong. You. Su Feifei was even more angry, grabbed the bag in her hand, looked carefully again. This is real. It was specially bought by my boyfriend. Before Su Feifei could finish speaking, the chain of the bag broke with her forceful tug. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Su Feifei also instantly fell silent. After all, with this quality, if she dared to say it was real, Coco Chanel could crawl out of her grave and beat her. So I smiled slightly, and learned the tone she used to talk to me just now. Oh, it turns out to be fake. Haha, it really suits you. I was satisfied to see Su Feifei's face turn green, and then I raised my hand and pointed to the more expensive new limited edition bag on the counter. I want that one. Then I swiped my card in Su Feifei's shocked eyes and walked away. In the next few days, Su Feifei's mood was very bad. After all, in her understanding, my dad gave me pocket money to buy bags as much as I wanted, but bought her a fake one. In those days when Uncle Song came to pick me up, I found that he had dark circles under his eyes. TSK. As if he had been drained. A week later, Su Feifei was finally in a good mood. Because Uncle Song finally gave her a real bag. But I can still tell that it should be a second-hand one. So when she was showing off triumphantly, I kindly reminded her, this bag looks a bit old. Su Feifei's face stiffened, and then she shouted, what do you know? This is called deliberately making it look old. I nodded perfunctorily, and stopped arguing with her. After all, some people just like to use things that others don't want. The summer vacation is approaching soon. Although it is the freshman year, our school, as a first-class university, is very involuted. Everyone has already started to prepare for summer internships in the freshman year. Su Feifei came to me to inquire as usual. Chi-Chi, did you apply for an internship at Hengshi Group? I know she peeks at my computer every day, so I don't bother to hide it from her, that's right. What a coincidence. Su Feifei widened her eyes, I also applied for Hengshi, but I heard that they recruit very few freshman interns every year. It seems that we are in a competitive relationship. I actually know very well that Su Feifei followed me to apply for Hengshi after peeking at my application. I don't know why this woman likes to steal my things so much, but I have my own reasons for applying for Hengshi, so I won't be affected by her. After layers of interviews, the internship list of Hengshi was finally confirmed. They recruited a total of 10 sophomore and junior students, and only Su Feifei and I were recruited as freshmen. Su Feifei was obviously not satisfied with my acceptance. But she still said to me in a delicate voice, "Chi-Chi, we can intern at the same company, that's great. By the way, didn't I tell you that a senior who has been pursuing me for many years has also interned at Hengshi? He told me a lot about Hengshi. If you want to know, you can ask me." I just laughed when I heard this. Come on. Hengshi is simply owned by my dad. Do I still need to ask her if I want to know about Hengshi? In fact, I went to Hengshi for an internship at my dad's request. He wants me to take over Hengshi in the future, so he hopes that I can start from the grassroots level through an internship. Of course, I'm too lazy to tell Su Feifei these things. After all, Su Feifei not only misunderstood that Uncle Song was my dad, but also misunderstood that my family was just a little rich. The internship will not start until the summer vacation, but the students who were admitted to Hengshi have already started preparing in advance. They even organized a dinner party, inviting those who got internship offers this time and the seniors who had interned at Hengshi before. The purpose is to let us newcomers learn from the seniors. It's so involuted that it's scary. I actually don't need to learn from any seniors, but in order to appear gregarious, I still went. But I didn't expect that as soon as I arrived at the KTV, I saw the tall boy sitting on the sofa. The dim light of the KTV hit his face, dim and unclear, but still very good-looking. I froze all of a sudden. Sumosai? Why is he here too? Then I remembered that my dad did seem to have told me that Sumosai had interned at Hengshi last year. At this time, the girls who were with me also saw Sumosai. They suddenly became excited. Wow! It's Senior Mosai, the school hunk of the finance department. He's so handsome. I didn't expect him to come. I should have changed into a sexier dress if I had known. This guy, Sumosai, is still as popular as ever. Another girl next to me thought of something and couldn't help but ask Su Feifei. By the way, Feifei, you said that a senior who has been pursuing you for many years has also interned at Hengshi. Could it be Senior Mosai? Obviously, Su Feifei had boasted about the story of the senior who had been pursuing her for many years to more than just me. Su Feifei's face stiffened, but then she vaguely said, "Oh, keep a low profile." Her words really caused misunderstandings. The girls looked at her with envy. Oh my God, it's really Senior Mosai. Why don't you agree to such a handsome person chasing you? I remember, is your boyfriend a little older than you? Do you like the mature type? But no matter what, it's still too cool to have a suitor like Sumosai. Su Feifei smiled without saying a word, continuing to give everyone room for imagination. But I was upset. Even more upset than when she fantasized about being my mother all day long. The party started soon, and everyone first asked the seniors a lot of questions about the internship. After discussing the business, everyone let loose and played. They were playing Truth or Dare. Soon the turntable turned to me and Sumosai. I made a request, and Sumosai fulfilled it. Let's do Truth. I spoke before Sumosai. Sumosai, I heard that you have been chasing Su Feifei for many years. Is this true or false? As soon as my direct question came out, everyone present was stunned. Su Feifei looked at me in panic with a pale face. Only Sumosai was still calm. He looked up at me, his eyes still as beautiful as I remembered. It's false. I heard him say calmly, Su-Chi, the only person I have liked all these years is you. Here is the continuation with name changes and story embellishments. Anastasia's heart, which had been clenched with a mixture of annoyance and lingering affection, suddenly loosened. A wave of relief washed over her, leaving her feeling strangely lightheaded. The other interns, however, were utterly dumbfounded. They exchanged bewildered glances, their faces a mixture of confusion and barely suppressed excitement. The air crackled with unasked questions. Finally, one of the girls, a petite brunette named Lyra, couldn't contain herself any longer. So, Lyra began, her voice hesitant, the senior who supposedly chased Ophelia for years, wasn't Balthazar? Then why didn't she clarify things and let everyone misunderstand? All eyes turned to Ophelia, who was now ashen-faced and visibly trembling. She opened her mouth to offer some sort of explanation, but before she could utter a word, a stout, bespectacled senior named Theron abruptly stood up. "Ophelia!" Theron exclaimed, his voice thick with emotion, his fists clenched at his sides. "It was me who chased you for years. What, did you think I wasn't even good enough to be your spare tire?" The truth was instantly, brutally clear to everyone. Ophelia, deeming Theron unworthy of public acknowledgement, had deliberately allowed the others to believe that the object of her affections was the far more desirable Balthazar. A wave of scornful glances washed over Ophelia. She couldn't bear the weight of their judgment. Covering her face with her hands, she sobbed and fled the private room. The party ended shortly thereafter. Balthazar and the other graduating seniors, burdened with thesis deadlines and lab work, made their excuses and departed. As soon as Balthazar was out of sight, the other girls swarmed Anastasia. "Anastasia, what's the real story between you and Senior Balthazar?" Lyra asked, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. Anastasia answered truthfully, "He's my ex-boyfriend." She added, almost as an afterthought, "We were childhood sweethearts, grew up together." The flames of gossip burned even brighter in their eyes. "But it looks like he's still very much into you. Why did you two break up in the first place?" Anastasia fell silent. The reason for their breakup, even now, seemed absurdly trivial. Seeing her reluctance to speak, the others didn't press further. Anastasia soon returned to the dormitory. But as soon as she stepped inside, a water glass flew past her ear, shattering against the wall. She looked up to see Ophelia's furious, contorted face. "Anastasia! You did that on purpose. You deliberately wanted to make me look like a fool." Looking at Ophelia's rage-filled expression, Anastasia found that any lingering sentimentality she had felt because of Balthazar had been replaced by a surge of satisfaction. Yes, she was that petty. "Yes, I did it on purpose," Anastasia replied, kicking aside the shards of glass with a nonchalant smile. "If you have anyone to blame, blame yourself for trying to show off in front of my ex-boyfriend." "You." Ophelia pointed a trembling finger at Anastasia's nose. "Just you wait. I'll make sure your dad deals with you." Anastasia couldn't help but laugh at this threat. Deals with me? Was she going to have Silas slam on the brakes a few extra times during her rides? But outwardly, she played along, clutching her shoulders dramatically. "Oh, I'm so scared," she said, her voice dripping with mock terror. She thought that Ophelia was on the verge of a breakdown. For the next few days, Ophelia was like a landmine in the dormitory, exploding at the slightest provocation. Anastasia knew perfectly well that Ophelia was probably desperately trying to influence Silas, whispering in his ear, urging him to punish her. But Silas, of course, had no such power. Eventually, Ophelia seemed to realize that the Silas route was a dead end, and she changed her tactics. She started to try and seduce Balthazar. One of the other girls interning at Hengshi Group informed Anastasia of this development. "Anastasia, you wouldn't believe how shameless that Ophelia is. She's been waiting outside Senior Balthazar's classroom every day, refusing to leave." Anastasia, however, remained unfazed. "So? What's Balthazar's reaction?" "He ignores her, of course. Senior Balthazar wouldn't even glance at someone like her." Anastasia nodded, satisfied. "Good. At least in terms of that kind of ex-boyfriend, Balthazar has infinitely better taste than Lucian ever had." But no matter how much better his taste, he was still an ex-boyfriend. Balthazar was about to graduate. He would likely go on to work for his father's company after that. Their opportunities to see each other would dwindle. The thought, unexpectedly, filled Anastasia with a pang of sadness. But, as it turned out, she had worried needlessly. Summer internship at Hengshi. When Ophelia and Anastasia reported to the company together, they surprisingly saw Balthazar sit down at his workstation. Anastasia was shocked. She could only hold on to her countless questions until the morning's HR training was over. During the lunch break, Anastasia dragged Balthazar into a break room. Anastasia's confirmation hit her like a physical blow. It was, without a doubt, her project proposal. From the meticulously designed slides to the carefully crafted speech, Ophelia hadn't changed a single word. Anastasia's knuckles turned white as she gripped the edge of her chair. This was beyond audacity. Ophelia had stolen boyfriends, fathers, and now, her intellectual property? Ophelia finished her presentation and returned to her seat, a smug, self-satisfied expression playing on her lips. The group leader, a man named Jasper, turned to Anastasia. "Anastasia, you're up next." Anastasia rose, her face devoid of expression. "Leader Jasper, I believe there's no need for me to present. My proposal has already been presented, having been stolen by Ophelia." Her words caused an uproar in the conference room. Ophelia's eyes widened in a mixture of panic and feigned shock. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks, lending her an air of injured innocence. "Anastasia, how could you say that? I spent countless sleepless nights working on this proposal. Why are you trying to discredit me?" Jasper frowned slightly. "Anastasia, do you have any proof?" Anastasia smiled faintly. "Of course." With Ophelia's eyes widening in genuine terror, Anastasia walked over to the computer and opened Ophelia's presentation. "I have a habit when creating presentations. To prevent them from being misused, I add my name in white font in a blank space. This way, it's invisible to the casual observer, but it definitively proves that the presentation is mine." As she spoke, she selected an invisible text box and changed the font color to black. Immediately, the name Anastasia appeared in large letters. It was on every single slide. Undeniable proof. The other interns, realizing what had transpired, cast subtle, knowing glances at Ophelia. So, Ophelia really did steal Anastasia's proposal. I wouldn't have guessed it. Ophelia looks so sweet and innocent, but her methods are truly despicable. As fellow workers, they all deeply abhorred the act of stealing someone else's hard work. Ophelia's face was ashen. She probably hadn't even dreamed that Anastasia would have taken such a precaution. She was now a picture of helplessness and false contrition, on the verge of tears. I really didn't. Enough. Jasper's voice cut through the murmurs. He looked at Anastasia and Ophelia. It's difficult to determine definitively who is at fault here. Therefore, this proposal will be disregarded. Both of you will have to redo it. Anastasia stared at Jasper in disbelief. Leader Jasper, it's obvious that Ophelia stole my proposal. What's so difficult to determine? Jasper waved his hand dismissively. It's just a text box. It's possible that you added it after Ophelia finished the presentation. Anastasia's disbelief intensified, but Jasper was clearly unwilling to dwell on the issue. All right, let's move on. The next person, please present. After the presentations concluded, Anastasia went to the break room and gulped down a large glass of ice water, trying to quell the burning anger within her. She was still seething and reached for another glass of ice water, but a strong, elegant hand stopped her. She looked up to see Balthazar, his brow furrowed in concern. You have a sensitive stomach. Don't drink so much ice water. Perhaps it was his striking good looks, or the genuine concern in his voice, but Anastasia suddenly felt her anger dissipate. I'm just so frustrated, she mumbled. It's clear that Ophelia stole my proposal. I know, Balthazar said, his voice soft and understanding. And everyone else knows it too. He paused, then added, speaking of which, you've become much more clever this time, adding your name to the slides. Anastasia let out a frustrated huff. Of course, people grow up, don't they? I can't expect my father and you to protect me forever. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Balthazar was no longer her boyfriend. Why would he protect her? Predictably, Balthazar was taken aback by her statement. Anastasia felt a wave of awkwardness wash over her. She was about to backtrack, but Balthazar spoke first. Seraphina, I actually would like to protect you forever. Anastasia was stunned. She looked up, and saw that Balthazar was gazing at her intently. About what happened before. I've thought about it a lot. I didn't protect you well enough back then, and I shouldn't have scolded you on top of that. Seraphina, I was wrong. Please don't be angry with me anymore, okay? Anastasia was speechless. She hadn't expected Balthazar, with all his pride, to apologize so openly. Her mind was a blank, and before she could formulate a response, the break room door swung open. Ophelia stood in the doorway, feigning a look of surprise. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were in here. The fragile, intimate atmosphere was instantly shattered. Balthazar frowned slightly and whispered to Anastasia, I'll drive you home after work, before leaving the break room. Once Balthazar was gone, Ophelia turned to Anastasia. Anastasia, I hope I didn't interrupt anything? Anastasia couldn't believe that, even after everything, this woman still had the gall to call her Anastasia so familiarly. Her audacity was almost impressive. Anastasia gave a mirthless smile. Don't worry, you didn't interrupt anything. After all, we're not like you and group leader Jasper, getting busy in the break room. Ophelia's face instantly froze. What do you mean? Don't play dumb, Anastasia said coldly. I saw you last night. The previous night, Anastasia had been working late, preparing her presentation. She had heard strange noises coming from the break room. 10 minutes later, she had seen Ophelia and Jasper emerge, disheveled and flustered. At the time, she had dismissed it as her imagination running wild. Surely, even Ophelia wouldn't be so brazen in the workplace. But seeing Jasper's blatant favoritism towards Ophelia today, Anastasia realized that Ophelia was truly capable of anything. Ophelia, Anastasia said, her voice laced with disgust, how much do you enjoy stealing other people's things? Does it make you feel good to steal a married man? Ophelia's face turned white. Then, she shrieked, what do you mean I like to steal things? You girls with your little bit of money don't understand anything. My father abandoned me when I was a child. My mother remarried and treated me like a burden. Everything I've ever had has been hand-me-downs from my stepsister. Do you think I like stealing your things? It's because if I don't steal, I have nothing. Ophelia was crying, tears streaming down her face, but Anastasia remained unmoved. Don't try to play the victim, Anastasia said coldly. Even if you had a tragic past, it's no excuse for stealing from others and ruining their lives. Without another glance at Ophelia's cheap tears, Anastasia turned to leave. But as she reached the break room door, she remembered something. She turned back to Ophelia and smiled. Oh, and by the way, you were wrong about something else. My family doesn't just have a little bit of money. They were extremely wealthy. Ophelia was stunned. What do you mean? Anastasia's smile widened, becoming more enigmatic. If you want to know, why don't you ask my daddy? With that, she left the break room. Although Jasper didn't pursue the matter of Ophelia stealing her proposal, it was clear to everyone what had happened. As a result, Ophelia behaved herself for the remainder of the internship. Until one day, something major happened at the company. The proposal for one of their group's major projects was plagiarized by a rival company. The competitor launched the product before they could, rendering months of their team's efforts useless. Jasper was furious. There must be a mole, he roared, slamming his fist on the table. They not only stole our idea, but they also had our data. Someone must have leaked the entire proposal. Everyone was too intimidated to speak. Then, Ophelia timidly raised her hand. Leader Jasper, I saw Anastasia sneak into your office last night when no one else was around. All eyes turned to Anastasia. She let out a laugh, fueled by sheer anger. Ophelia, are you suggesting that I snuck into the group leader's office and stole the proposal? Do you have any proof? Tears instantly welled up in Ophelia's eyes. I don't have proof, I'm just stating what I saw. She looked at Jasper with a pitiful expression, and Jasper, his face impassive, turned to Anastasia. What Ophelia said is indeed possible. After all, you're just an intern. Compared to the other full-time employees, you are indeed the most suspicious. Looking at Jasper's face, Anastasia understood everything. She suspected that Jasper himself had sold the proposal to the rival company. He was pinning the blame on her to cover his own tracks and, at the same time, help his little lover, Ophelia, eliminate a perceived threat. Jasper dared to do this to her because he believed she was a powerless intern with no connections, unable to defend herself. Just like now, the other colleagues in the room might see through the charade, but no one dared to speak up for her. And the one person who would speak up for her, Balthazar, was away on a business trip. Anastasia gave Jasper a cold smile. Leader Jasper, what kind of logic is that? Why am I the most suspicious just because I'm an intern? Isn't it obvious? Jasper said impatiently. You're only working here for a few months, and then you'll be gone. The company's interests are clearly irrelevant to you, so you wouldn't hesitate to betray the company. The company's interests are irrelevant to me? Anastasia repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Leader Jasper, are you sure about that? Jasper frowned, about to continue his tirade, when suddenly, there was a commotion behind him. He turned around to see a man in a suit, accompanied by a group of people, striding towards them. It was the manager of the marketing department, Manager Lewis. Clearly, the news of the stolen proposal had reached the higher-ups. Manager Lewis approached Jasper and demanded sternly, Jasper Fong. What the hell is going on here? The Callan project is one of our biggest projects this year. How could the proposal have been stolen? Jasper stammered, Manager Lewis, we've already figured it out. It was our intern who stole the proposal. He pointed directly at Anastasia without hesitation. Manager Lewis finally noticed Anastasia. He froze. But Jasper, oblivious to the change in Manager Lewis's expression, continued to shout, Manager Lewis, don't worry, I will severely punish this intern. Not only will she be fired, but I'll also have HR put her on the industry blacklist. So she'll never find another job. Before Jasper could finish his sentence, Manager Lewis pushed him aside and rushed towards Anastasia, almost frantic. Miss Anastasia! Manager Lewis exclaimed, clasping his hands together, a nervous, ingratiating smile on his face. What are you doing here? The entire office fell into a stunned silence. Jasper's jaw dropped, his tongue seemingly tied in knots. And Miss Anastasia? Anastasia looked at Manager Lewis calmly. Uncle Lewis, my father asked me to come to the company for an internship to gain some experience. But I didn't expect the internal personnel situation in our company to be so complicated. Someone steals and sells company proposals, and then they try to pin it on an intern. Manager Lewis, instantly realizing what had happened, slapped Jasper across the head. What nonsense are you talking about? This is President Valerius's daughter. How could she possibly steal her own company's proposal and give it to someone else? Jasper finally realized who he had offended, and his face turned completely white. With Manager Lewis's intervention, the truth about the stolen proposal was quickly uncovered. As Anastasia had suspected, Jasper was the culprit. He had sold the proposal to the rival company himself. Jasper was immediately dismissed. That evening, as Anastasia was about to leave work, Ophelia blocked her path at the elevator. Anastasia, is it true that your father is the chairman of Hengshi Group? Anastasia looked up at Ophelia and saw that the excitement in her eyes was barely contained. Anastasia knew exactly what Ophelia was thinking, so she smiled. Yes, didn't you know? Ophelia looked even more excited. Anastasia, she began, her voice sickeningly sweet, I know we've had some misunderstandings in the past, but we're going to be family soon, so shouldn't we just let it go? She looked at Anastasia innocently, but Anastasia couldn't help but laugh. Family? Did she think the gates of the Valerius family were so easy to enter? But she didn't bother to expose Ophelia's delusion. She simply raised an eyebrow. You want to be family with me, do you? Then keep working at it. With that, she turned and walked away. Anastasia's keep working at it was meant as pure sarcasm. But she hadn't expected Ophelia to take it so literally. 3 months later, on the last day of their internship, Ophelia stopped Anastasia in the dormitory, tears welling up in her eyes, her voice trembling with excitement. Anastasia, I'm pregnant. You're going to have a little brother. Here is the final part of the story. Even Anastasia, who thought she had seen it all, was stunned by Ophelia's announcement. You. She stammered, staring incredulously at Ophelia's stomach. Ophelia was already cradling her abdomen with a look of blissful anticipation. The baby is 10 weeks old. I sent a sample abroad for a non-invasive prenatal test. It's a boy. Anastasia, I remember you're an only child, right? Now you're going to have a little brother. Ophelia couldn't resist casting a smug glance at Anastasia. Anastasia finally regained her composure. Her expression was a mixture of pity and disbelief. She hadn't expected Ophelia to go to such lengths. It was almost sad. Have you told the father? Anastasia asked. Does he want the child? Ophelia's face momentarily stiffened, but then she shrieked, Anastasia, what do you mean? Of course, he wants the child. It's a son. Ophelia was brimming with confidence, but Anastasia couldn't bring herself to tell her the truth. Silas was already married and had several sons. He didn't need another one. Moreover, Silas's wife was a formidable woman. If she found out about Silas's infidelity and the child, she would likely tear him apart. So, Anastasia patted Ophelia's shoulder, offering a rare moment of sincerity. Well, I wish you the best of luck. Over the next few days, Anastasia observed Ophelia's transformation. The initial excitement and smugness gave way to anxiety and desperation. Anastasia knew her suspicions were correct. Silas clearly had no intention of acknowledging the child. Ophelia probably couldn't fathom what she had done wrong. The constant morning sickness added to her misery, making her increasingly thin and erratic. Time flew by, and soon it was time for Hengshi Group's annual gala. As the heiress of Hengshi, Anastasia was naturally expected to attend. The night before the gala, after some deliberation, she invited Balthazar to be her escort. He accepted without hesitation. At the gala, Anastasia's father, Valerius, had just finished his speech and stepped down from the stage when a commotion erupted near the entrance. Let me go. Let me go. I'm carrying your chairman's child. Why are you keeping me out? A disheveled woman, her hair a tangled mess, was screaming and struggling with the security guards. It was Ophelia. Hearing her shouts, the guests exchanged uneasy glances. What did she say? She's carrying President Valerius's child? Is that true? Everyone looked curiously towards Valerius and Aurelia, Anastasia's mother. Aurelia's face was a mask of thunderous fury as she glared at her husband. Valerius, a notorious henpecked husband, was immediately terrified. He frantically waved his hands, vehemently denying the accusation. No, it's not true. I don't even know this woman. His explanation, however, was far from convincing. The guest's eyes still held a mixture of suspicion and amusement. But then, something happened that shocked everyone. Ophelia broke free from the security guards and rushed forward. But instead of heading towards Valerius, she ran towards Silas, who was standing behind Valerius, trying to make himself inconspicuous. She grabbed Silas's arm, screaming, I'm carrying your child. Your son. Why won't you acknowledge your own son? The entire room? Everyone looked at each other, utterly bewildered. The woman had initially claimed to be carrying Valerius's child, so why was she now clinging to Valerius's driver? Only Ophelia seemed oblivious to the monumental blunder she had made. She continued to cling to Silas, who was desperately trying to disappear into the floor. Seeing Silas's lack of response, Ophelia turned her attention to Anastasia. She rushed towards Anastasia, grabbing her arm as if she were a lifeline. Anastasia! Help me convince your father. I'm carrying his flesh and blood. He can't just turn his back on us. Looking at Ophelia's frantic, desperate eyes, Anastasia calmly, gently, removed her hand from Ophelia's grasp. Ophelia, I think you've made a mistake, Anastasia said coldly, gesturing towards her parents beside her. This is my father. Ophelia froze. She looked up at Valerius and Aurelia, finally realizing that they were the ones seated at the head table. Her face slowly drained of color. Then she stammered, pointing a trembling finger at Silas, who was now too ashamed to even lift his head. Who is he? This time, it was Valerius, Anastasia's real father, who answered. He's my driver. Thud. Ophelia collapsed to the floor. Anastasia, considering that Ophelia was, after all, pregnant, was about to call someone to help her up. But then, Ophelia suddenly snapped. Anastasia, she shrieked, leaping to her feet. It's you. You deliberately tricked me. I'll kill you. Clearly, Ophelia believed that Anastasia had intentionally misled her, leading her to this disastrous outcome. She grabbed a wine bottle from a nearby table and lunged at Anastasia, aiming to smash it over her head. Seraphina! Valerius and Aurelia cried out in alarm, trying to intervene, but they were too far away. Just as the bottle was about to make contact, a strong arm pulled Anastasia away, shielding her with his body. Crash! The bottle shattered, not against Anastasia, but against Balthazar, who had pulled her into his protective embrace. Balthazar! Balthazar's parents, Lord and Lady Blackwood, who were also attending the gala, were pale with fear. Lord Blackwood's beard trembled with rage. Who is this crazy woman? Get her out of here. She dared to hurt my son. She'll pay for this. Lord Blackwood, unlike the mild-mannered Valerius, was known for his ruthless, decisive actions. Ophelia had harmed his only son. She was truly finished. Ophelia, finally seeming to realize what she had done, was terrified. She was dragged away, her face ashen. Anastasia, frantic with worry, accompanied Balthazar to the hospital. After a thorough examination, it turned out that Balthazar was unharmed, apart from a few minor cuts. But Anastasia couldn't help but be angry. Are you crazy? Why did you shield me? What if that bottle had hit you on the head? Balthazar simply smiled, his usual good-natured expression unchanged. It's okay, I knew what I was doing. You knew what you were doing? You knew? Anastasia was about to continue her tirade, but Balthazar gently grasped her hand. Seraphina, are you worried about me? He asked, a soft smile playing on his lips. If you're worried, then it was worth it. Anastasia was taken aback by his sudden, tender words. She was about to retort, reminding him that their parents were present, but when she looked up, she realized that Valerius, Aurelia, and Lord and Lady Blackwood had all discreetly left the room. Balthazar gently squeezed her hand. Seraphina, answer me. Were you worried? Anastasia looked at Balthazar, and finally, reluctantly, she nodded. A little, she admitted softly. Balthazar's smile widened. A small dimple appeared on his left cheek, making his usually cool demeanor seem endearingly vulnerable. Since you're worried, he said, his voice even gentler, then forgive me, and let's get back together, okay? Anastasia looked at Balthazar, instinctively wanting to be stubborn, but when she saw the small cut on his neck from a shard of glass, she couldn't bring herself to say the harsh words that were on the tip of her tongue. She lowered her head, and finally, softly, she spoke. All right, she said. I'll be magnanimous and forgive you. The end.